This happened when I was 19. I'm 22 now, but that night still haunts me. It was a regular Friday evening, hot and sticky, the kind where the air feels heavy and the streetlights look blurry. I decided to go to a late-night movie at the drive-in theater. I'd been there lots of times with my friends, but this time I went alone. The drive was about 20 minutes from my house, through some dark, winding back roads surrounded by woods that always seemed creepy at night. I remember driving with my windows down, the air smelling like wet dirt and something floral, with a bit of gasoline mixed in. It was already past 11 p.m. when I got close to the theater, and that's when I saw it. An old, beat-up car on the side of the road, half hidden by bushes. It was dark red, almost black in the shadows, and the headlights were off. I slowed down a little to look, but couldn't see anyone inside. My chest tightened, but I tried to brush it off. Maybe someone had car trouble. I turned into the gravel lot of the drive-in. The last show of the night was already playing, so the lot was mostly empty. The blue light from the screen flickered over the few parked cars. I parked near the back, the crunch of gravel under my tires making my skin prickle for some reason. I tuned the radio to the movie's audio and tried to relax. But then I saw something in my rearview mirror, a figure moving between the cars. It wasn't walking normally, it was kind of skittering fast and low, like it was trying not to be seen. My heart started racing. I kept staring at the mirror, but whatever it was had disappeared. I shook my head and told myself I was being stupid. Maybe it was just someone looking for a spot or going to the snack bar. I tried to focus on the movie, but about 15 minutes later, I heard a soft click, like a car door opening. I turned around quickly, but everything looked the same. The lot was silent except for the movie playing in the background. My mind was spinning, telling me it was just the wind or the metal cooling down. But then I saw it. A handprint on my passenger window. It was big and smeared, like someone had pressed their hand there and dragged it down. My body went cold, and I couldn't move for a second. The sound of the movie faded into the background as my heartbeat thudded in my ears. I looked around, trying to see if anyone was nearby, and that's when I noticed him. A tall, thin man standing a couple of rows over, half hidden by a dark SUV. He had a jacket with the collar up, and his face was in the shadows, but I could see his eyes glinting as he stared at me. He didn't move. He just watched. My hands were shaking as I reached for my keys. I couldn't get them into the ignition fast enough. The man didn't move an inch, just stood there like he was waiting for something. When the engine finally roared to life, he took a step forward, quick and sudden. I panicked and slammed my foot on the gas, the tires spinning on the gravel before I sped out of there. As I left the lot, I glanced in my mirror one last time. He was gone. Just like that. The drive home was a blur, every shadow by the road making my heart jump. When I got to my driveway, I sat in my car for what felt like forever, too scared to go inside. I don't know who he was or what he wanted, but even now, 3 years later, I can't drive by that road without feeling like someone's watching me from the trees. This happened when my boyfriend Alex and I first moved into our new place together. I was 23 then, and we were so excited to start this new chapter in a quiet town that seemed perfect for us. The house was small but cozy, just right for us and our future plans. We'd only been there for about 2 weeks, still sorting out boxes and trying to make the place feel like home. Our first encounter with the neighbors was pleasant. There was an older couple next door who were friendly and chatted with us the day we moved in. The other houses were spread out, so we didn't meet anyone else for a while. We spent our evenings unpacking, exhausted from working during the day and setting up our home at night. One evening, Alex was making dinner. Pasta, something quick and easy. I was sitting at the dining table with my laptop, browsing for a rug to put in our living room. The house was warm, a bit too warm, so I walked over to the sliding glass door to let in some air. That's when I saw him. There was a man sitting in one of our lawn chairs right in the backyard. He was hunched over, head down, and completely still. My heart dropped. I whispered Alex's name and told him not to freak out, but there was a man outside. He put the spatula down and came over, eyes wide when he saw the figure. "Should I say something?" he asked, glancing at me with a mix of fear and resolve. I shook my head, unsure. The man hadn't moved yet, but his presence was enough to send chills down my spine. Alex hesitated for a moment before knocking on the glass and yelling, "Hey, you need to leave!" The man lifted his head slowly, revealing a gaunt face lined with age and a long, scruffy gray beard. He smirked at us, almost like he found the whole thing amusing, then stood up. He was tall, taller than Alex, and covered in tattoos that ran down his arms. He walked toward the glass door, making my pulse race. Alex double-checked the lock, and we both took a step back. The man stood there staring at us through the glass, his gaze shifting between us before settling on me. A sick grin spread across his face as he licked his lips and mumbled something I couldn't make out, but didn't want to. "I'm calling the police," I said, trying to sound brave. I slid the blinds shut, blocking him from view, but I could still hear his voice louder now, spewing vile words that made my skin crawl. The 911 operator told me to stay on the line and assured me that officers were on their way. We could still hear the man's voice outside, rising and falling as he yelled. Then suddenly it went silent. I peeked out from the edge of the blinds, and he was gone. Relief washed over me just as the flashing lights of the police car pulled into our driveway. The officers searched the yard and took our report, but the man had vanished. They promised to keep an eye out for him, and after a while they left. We tried to shake it off and settled in to watch some TV, but the tension in the air was still thick. Every sound made us jump. A little while later, we both heard it. A faint noise from outside, like footsteps crunching on gravel. I crept over to the window, lifting the blinds just a sliver, and saw him standing at the edge of the yard, a cigarette glowing in his hand. He was staring straight at the house, muttering to himself. The moment he saw the blinds move, he sprinted toward the window. I backed up, my heart slamming in my chest as he pounded on the glass, screaming things so obscene I couldn't even repeat them. "Go upstairs," I told Alex, my voice shaking. "I don't want you to hear this." He ran up the stairs while I grabbed the phone and called 911 again. The pounding suddenly stopped, and I strained to hear any movement. I peered out once more, and he was gone. Minutes later, the police arrived. This time, I didn't turn on any lights or give away that we had called them. The officers searched the yard, even shining flashlights into the woods behind our house. But again, they found nothing. The next day, we went around knocking on doors, introducing ourselves to the neighbors we hadn't met yet, and asking if they knew who this man might be. One couple, a few houses down, told us they knew who he was, a local troublemaker, known for violent behavior and substance abuse. He had a history of domestic violence and was considered dangerous. Apparently, he lived in a rundown house not far from ours. We reported all this to the police, but without any footage or concrete evidence, there wasn't much they could do. Thankfully, we haven't seen him since that night. But every so often, I find myself checking the locks twice and peeking outside, just in case. And every creak or bump in the dark still makes me hold my breath, waiting. I was 14 when this happened. It was mid-autumn, and the chill in the air bit harder with each passing day. I spent most afternoons buried in books or playing video games, losing myself in the stories to escape the routine of school and life. That day, the sky was an ominous gray, and heavy rain lashed against the windows, casting a rhythm that somehow felt too loud in the silence of my empty house. My mom worked double shifts as a paramedic and was often gone until late. My dad was overseas for work, and it had been just me for a while. I was used to it, the quiet, the creaks of an old house breathing. But something about that evening felt different. It was around 6:30 when I heard the first knock. I froze mid-bite into my sandwich, listening intently as it echoed through the hall. The knock came again, louder this time, firm and deliberate. I glanced out the window. The rain pounded so heavily that visibility was almost zero. No car in sight, no familiar shape or shadow on the driveway. I stood and moved slowly toward the front door, my heart drumming in my chest. The knock came a third time, 3 solid raps that seemed to reverberate through my bones. Peering through the peephole, my heart seized up. A man in a rain-slicked black coat stood on the porch, face shadowed by a dripping hood. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and had an air that sent a jolt of primal fear through me. He wasn't looking directly at the door, but scanning the street as if checking for something, or someone. "Who is it?" I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer, just another knock, this time slower, more deliberate. My breath quickened. I wasn't expecting anyone, and something about this man felt wrong. I inched back, my eyes glued to the door. "Open up, police," came a voice, muffled but forceful. The hood shifted as he leaned in, and I caught a glimpse of his face. His expression was unreadable, eyes dark and hard. My gut twisted. Police? There was no badge, no uniform, just that coat, dripping water that pooled at his feet. "Show me your badge," I demanded, my voice cracking. Silence. The rain pelted down harder, drumming on the roof like a warning. "Kid, I need to come in," he said, this time more insistent. But something was off. The urgency in his tone felt wrong, like a poorly rehearsed line. I took another step back, my pulse thundering in my ears. Then I noticed it, the subtle movement of his other hand, half hidden by his coat, the glint of metal. Panic flooded my senses. Without another word, I bolted for the kitchen phone, the thud of my feet masked by the hammering rain. My fingers shook as I dialed 911, my breath ragged and loud in the receiver. 911, what's your emergency?" The operator's voice was calm, a lifeline in the chaos. "There's someone at my door," I gasped, claiming to be a cop, but I don't think... A deafening crash interrupted me and I screamed. The front door rattled on its hinges, splintering under a violent blow. The operator's voice rose in urgency, but I could barely hear her over my own pulse pounding in my ears. I dropped the phone and scrambled backward, heart racing as the door caved in with another shuddering slam. Heavy boots thudded across the entryway, the sound sending ice through my veins. I darted toward the living room, my mind racing for an escape route. The pounding of boots grew louder, closer, relentless. Suddenly, red and blue lights splashed across the walls, bathing the room in flashes of color. The sound of sirens cut through the rain, slicing the tension like a knife. The man halted, footsteps faltering as the noise registered. Through the window, I saw the silhouettes of 2 uniformed officers emerging from a patrol car, weapons drawn. The man cursed under his breath, spun on his heel, and bolted out the back door, disappearing into the storm. The officers swept into the house moments later, eyes sharp and alert. They found me trembling, still clutching the phone I had forgotten was in my hand. One of them knelt beside me, speaking in low, calming tones. The other radioed in pursuit. It turned out the intruder had been impersonating an officer to break into homes, preying on the trust of those too naive or scared to question him. He'd been wanted for months, and I'd come terrifyingly close to being one of his victims.